People love the phrase brain drain. It sounds tragic. It sounds intellectual. It lets commentators feel moral while doing absolutely nothing useful. Singapore is supposedly losing brains to Malaysia. Cue dramatic sighs, LinkedIn think pieces, and conference panels with bad coffee. Here's the boring truth that ruins the poetry. No brains are draining. Payroll is. This isn't some emotional migration of talent-seeking sunsets and Narcy Lamarck enlightenment. This is a cost optimization exercise performed by companies that smile politely while sharpening Excel formulas. Humans did not suddenly become less ambitious crossing the causeway. They just became cheaper per unit. Let's stop pretending this is cultural or philosophical. Capital does not care about vibes. Capital cares about margins. In Singapore, labour is priced like a premium ETF. Stable, regulated, expensive. Comes with CPF obligations, rising housing costs, healthcare contributions, and a workforce that expects the audacity of long-term security. In Malaysia, labour is priced like a high-yield bond, risk-adjusted, flexible, and conveniently discounted. Same degrees, same English, same laptops, lower salary line item, fewer benefits, less resistance. This isn't migration. This is arbitrage. Executives don't wake up asking, where can talent flourish? They ask, where can headcount stop killing EBITDA? And suddenly, everyone discovers Johor. Notice how the brain drain narrative always skips one detail. Productivity doesn't fall, output doesn't collapse, projects keep shipping, profits often improve. Funny how that works when the so-called missing brains are still working, just invoiced from somewhere cheaper. Let's be blunt. If this were really about brains, companies would move R&D leadership, strategic decision-making, and equity upside offshore. They don't. They move execution layers. The thinking stays. The doing relocates. Because thinking gets stock options. Doing gets salary compression. Singapore remains the place where capital parks itself. Funds, holding companies, regional HQs, tax planning, legal certainty. That doesn't change. What changes is where humans sit while generating the value that flows upward. This is the part nobody wants to say out loud. People are a cost center until proven otherwise. Stocks don't care if your team commutes from a glass tower or a budget condo across the border. Real estate investors don't care if developers staff locally or regionally, as long as pre-sales clear. Private equity definitely doesn't care, as long as labour arbitrage expands margins before exit. Call it what it is, not brain drain. Wage optimization with a passport stamp. If you're still calling this a talent crisis, congratulations, you fell for corporate PR. Now, before we go further and dissect how this plays into stock valuations, property bubbles, and why Singaporean households feel rich but strangely replaceable, do the ritual that keeps this channel alive. Hit like. Smash subscribe. Algorithms are the real labour overlords, and they accept only engagement as payment. Here's the part that annoys people who want neat morality tales. Singapore is not losing, not economically, not financially, not where it actually counts. People see Malaysians taking roles once filled by Singapore residents and assume decline. That's a very human mistake. Capital does not think like humans. Capital thinks like a landlord. In Singapore, the real product was never labour. The product is structure, legal certainty, capital mobility, predictable courts, tax clarity, currency stability. These are the things money is willing to pay for forever. Labour is just a recurring expense that ruins quarterly optics. So companies keep the expensive parts in Singapore. The holding companies, the IP ownership, the treasury desks, the investment committees, the stock option pools, the licensing, the regulatory shields, all the things that show up in investor decks and annual reports. Then they quietly move the humans who actually do the work to Malaysia. This is not hypocrisy, this is optimization. Think of Singapore like prime real estate. You don't manufacture furniture inside a luxury penthouse. You own the penthouse and let other people sweat elsewhere. The rent still flows upward. Public companies love this setup. Lower operating costs improve margins. Improved margins push EPS. EPS pushes stock prices. Executives get bonuses and LinkedIn applause. Shareholders smile. Analysts upgrade targets. Everyone wins, except the workers who were told this was about regional integration. Private equity loves it even more. Lower headcount costs mean cleaner exit multiples. Nobody asks where the payroll went, as long as the IRR looks sexy. And property investors? Please. As long as headquarters stay in Singapore, demand for premium housing survives. Executives still need condos. Funds still need offices. The city remains expensive by design. Exporting labour does not crash property prices. It protects them. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Singapore's economic model was never about employing everyone domestically. It was about controlling the funnel. Capital in, profits up, labour flexible, risk externalised. Malaysia absorbs the labour risk, wage pressure, infrastructure strain, career ceilings. Singapore keeps the upside, governance, capital flows, asset appreciation. That's why calling this brain drain misses the point entirely. Brains were never the scarce resource. Ownership was. The workers didn't leave because Singapore failed. They left because Singapore succeeded at becoming too expensive for its own labour layer. And this is where the story turns darker. Because once humans are proven replaceable by geography, the next step is proving them replaceable by automation, outsourcing, or both. Borders were just the first filter. If this sounds cold, good. Economic reality usually is. Before we tear into how this affects wages, class tension, and why young professionals feel permanently insecure even while GDP charts look healthy, do the algorithmic offering. Like, subscribe, share. Think of it as CPF for ideas. You contribute now, maybe it pays later. Let's kill another comforting myth. Malaysia is not naive. This isn't some wide-eyed country accidentally undercutting itself because it doesn't understand global capitalism. It understands perfectly. It just doesn't have the luxury of saying no. When Singapore companies shift operational roles south, Malaysia sees jobs, salaries, and foreign capital inflows. Politicians see employment statistics. Developers see condo pre-sales. Banks see mortgage growth. Everyone claps, because the alternative is worse. This is not strategic partnership. This is damage control with spreadsheets. In Malaysia, the pitch is always the same. We are cost competitive. We are English-speaking. We are young. We are hungry. Translation: we will absorb the pressure Singapore no longer wants. And it works, at least in the short term. Multinationals move support functions, regional ops, back offices, tech support, compliance processing, finance ops, middle management. The salaries look decent by local standards. Living costs feel manageable at first. Everyone feels upwardly mobile for about 5 minutes. Then reality kicks in. Wages stagnate, promotions slow, decision-making stays north, equity stays offshore. The top of the org chart remains stamped Singapore. Malaysian workers execute. Singapore signs. This is why productivity increases without a corresponding rise in national income. Value is created locally but booked elsewhere. The spreadsheet smiles, the worker doesn't. Meanwhile, real estate starts reacting. Johor developments explode. Condos are sold as Singapore-adjacent lifestyles. Investors price in permanent inflows. Prices rise faster than wages. Locals are told to be patient while speculators cash in early. Banks love this phase. Mortgage books grow. Developers leverage up. Construction feeds GDP. Politicians point to cranes and call it progress. Until the cycle matures. Once labour becomes the selling point, it becomes the pressure point. Companies renegotiate. Salaries freeze. Contracts shorten. Workers are reminded they are fortunate. The next cheaper location is always one highway or one visa policy away. Malaysia isn't stealing Singapore's future, it's renting out its present. And here's the cruel part. Many Malaysians know this is a trap, but opting out means unemployment, capital flight, and political backlash. So the country plays along, hoping to climb the value chain before the floor drops. Sometimes it works. Often it doesn't. Singapore doesn't need Malaysia to become rich, it just needs Malaysia to stay almost rich, rich enough to function, poor enough to stay compliant. This is not malice, it's structure. And structures don't apologise. Before we move on to why Singaporean workers feel anxious even while winning, take 5 seconds and feed the machine. Like, subscribe, comment. Engagement is the only universal currency left. Here's the quiet side effect nobody budgets for. When labour becomes portable, security evaporates. Not just in Malaysia, in Singapore too. Singaporean professionals were sold a deal. Study hard, stay competitive, play by the rules. In return, you get stability, a clean system, predictable growth. What they weren't told was the footnote in microscopic font, until your role becomes geographically optional. Once companies prove they can keep output steady while shifting execution to Malaysia, the psychological contract breaks. Raises slow, titles inflate without pay, performance reviews become vague sermons about regional competitiveness. You still work late, you just feel more disposable doing it. This is why anxiety spikes even when unemployment stays low. People sense the truth before economists do. They know they're no longer irreplaceable, they're priced. Meanwhile, across the border, Malaysian workers experience a different version of the same problem. Jobs arrive, but ceilings stay low. You can execute flawlessly and still watch strategic decisions made elsewhere. Promotions plateau. Stock options are theoretical. Leadership is imported. The resentment builds quietly on both sides. Singaporeans look south and feel undercut. Malaysians look north and feel capped. Capital looks at both and sees efficiency. Real estate makes it worse. In Singapore, housing stays brutally expensive because ownership remains the privilege of capital and senior management. Middle-class professionals rent longer, save harder, and delay life milestones while being told they're lucky to live in a global city. In Johor and nearby cities, prices rise because demand is imported. Locals compete with cross-border investors and speculators who price property in SGD logic while wages remain MYR reality. Everyone feels squeezed. Different currencies, same pressure. Stocks love this tension. Lower wage growth protects margins. Margin stability feeds valuations. Analysts praise cost discipline. Investors nod approvingly. Nobody asks how long humans can absorb the strain. This is the modern ASEAN labour model. Keep workers nervous. Keep capital calm. And the most cynical part? It works. For now. As long as people keep believing they're one promotion away from safety, the system holds. As long as they blame each other instead of the structure, the spreadsheet keeps winning. Before we get to the final act and explain why this setup eventually destabilizes consumption, property markets, and even political legitimacy, do the predictable thing. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, share it with someone who still thinks this is about brain drain. Here's the ending everyone pretends not to see. You can optimize labour only up to the point where people stop spending. After that, the math breaks. When wages flatten in Singapore, households delay upgrades. Condos sit longer on the market. Retail shifts to discounts. Services compress. Consumption softens quietly, then suddenly. When wages stagnate in Malaysia, the middle class never fully forms. Credit grows faster than income. Property becomes aspirational instead of functional. Domestic demand stays fragile. Growth depends on external capital that can leave overnight. Capital celebrates the early phase. Cost savings. Margin expansion. Stock buybacks. Rising indices. Headlines about efficiency and regional competitiveness. Then comes the bill. Lower consumption hurts earnings. Earnings pressure stock prices. Property prices decouple from wages too far to sustain organic demand. Governments face voter frustration, even if they don't call it that. Suddenly, stability requires subsidies, incentives, and policy gymnastics that quietly transfer risk back to the public. This is the cycle Singapore and Malaysia are now locked into. One exports cost pressure, the other imports it. Neither escapes. And this is why calling the situation brain drain is intellectually lazy. No one is losing intelligence. They are losing pricing power over their own labour. Capital, meanwhile, remains borderless. It moves faster than visas. It doesn't queue at the causeway. It doesn't commute. It just reallocates. If you want a real takeaway, it's this. The future belongs less to places and more to ownership structures. If you don't own equity, IP, or assets, your geography is negotiable, your salary is temporary, your stability is conditional. That's not cynicism. That's the spreadsheet speaking. If this breakdown made you uncomfortable, good. Discomfort means you're still paying attention. Now do the unglamorous part that keeps uncomfortable conversations alive. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment with your take. Share it with someone who still thinks this is about talent fleeing instead of value being extracted. This wasn't about Singapore versus Malaysia. It was about what happens when humans are treated like a line item, and line items are always the first thing optimized.